Please join me in the antiphonal reading number 437 in the Gray Hymnal. Let us worship with our eyes and ears and fingertips. We feed our eyes upon the mystery and revelation in the faces of our brothers and sisters. We seek to understand the shyness behind arrogance, the fear behind pride, the tenderness behind clumsy strength, the anguish behind cruelty.
All life flows into a great common life. If we will only open our eyes to our companions.
Let us worship, not in bowing down, not with closed eyes and stopped ears. Life comes with singing and laughter, with tears and confiding, with a rising wave too great to be held in the mind and heart and body to those who have fallen in love with life.
Let us worship and let us learn to love.
Welcome to the First Unitarian Church of Omaha.
Good morning. Welcome. Can I have all the young and young at heart come on down for the story for all ages? Hey guys. Hello, hello. It's good to see you on this snowy April day. Good morning. Hello, hello. 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 Well, today we're going to be learning about powerful women. And I was trying to find a good story for you about powerful women, and I started looking things up on the internet. And I have to be honest with you, I didn't get very far. In that, I didn't get any farther than this sanctuary. Because we have a crap ton of powerful women in this sanctuary. So I didn't actually find a story from outside for you. I kind of started thinking about the women here. And one of the women I thought about was my own mama, because, you know, she was kind of a powerhouse. And a lot of people knew her as an actress, but 50 years ago, she was actually one of the first managing underwriters at Mutual of Omaha who was a woman. Since the Korean War, when the menfolk went off to fight the war, a few women were able to manage. But then when the menfolk came back, they did not get management positions. But my mom was one of those women who came in and was able to break some stereotypes and be one of the first. So I thought about her, and I thought about Donna Neff, who has pages and pages of citations about her scientific research from Boys Town. And I thought about Kim Donovan, who's a lawyer who's working for justice all over Nebraska. And I thought about Beth Conover and her work in genetic research. And I thought about Jan Wilson, who was one of the only people who has helped me learn how to learn and remember artists' names. And this seems silly, but it was a huge deal, and I'm only going to tell you the one. But I remember Botticelli because she taught me to remember it as Potticelli, which is so helpful, especially since the Botticelli chicks look like they would love a pot of chili, you know? Like, you really get the sense of the artist as well. But you can learn over 35 or 40? How many do you have? 50. There's over 50 artists that she has these great little ways for you to learn. And we have Maria Wallace, who's teaching kids how to speak. She's a speech pathologist who's helping them be more successful in their lives every day. We have so many teachers in this room. I'm looking at my art teacher, Judith, over here, who took me down to the basement of Minnelusa to do cave paintings when I was in 6th grade. We have teachers and researchers and scientists and lawyers and powerhouse women here. Bethany, who is getting people jobs no matter what their abilities and helping them be successful in the world. So your job this week is to talk to a powerful woman in your life. Right before my mom died, my boys each had a day with her that they went and they spent and they videotaped and learned about her life. You have some powerful women in your life, don't you, Miss Grace? Your grandma wrote a book. So can your grandma read you that book this week, maybe? Maybe over Skype? Maybe. So this week, I want you to hang out with a powerful woman in your life because you all have some other ones who are doing everyday things for you and making sure that you're safe and protected every single day. And if you can't think of a single powerhouse woman in your life, I'm so sad for you, first of all. But there's 50 and 60 of them right out here in this church. So take one of them to lunch. Have your parents take them to lunch with you. Free lunch, y'all. All right, who's going to light the chalice with me today? You're going to read a whole story before we light the chalice? Can you tell just a little tiny part of the story before we light the chalice? Here, tell us this little part of the story. Oh, you have it? Go get the story from your dad, and maybe we'll read it right after we light the chalice. There is so much excitement. I love it. All right, we're going to start heading up to the chalice lighting as the story is being gotten for us. We're going all the way through. And some powerhouse women are helping us out. It's a good day. All right, please stand in body or spirit for the lighting of our chalice. And if your spirit soars as high as this one, you don't even need to stand. Come on over. You gonna light the chalice with this too? Come on, let's do it. Oh, William, are you grabbing fire by yourself first? Thanks, man. Okay, hold on. Remember we talked about how we're gonna pull it down. There we go. Good job. Thank you. All right. At times, our own.
Good morning. My name is Molly Duell. I'll be your worship associate this morning. I'd ask everyone to sign in on the pink sheets today that are found in the back of your pew. That lets us know who's here and who might need us to reach out to them. Also, remember that parking in the parking garage is no longer free, but you can, except if you're super special like us who get a parking machine. So you can validate your parking ticket in the downstairs and make sure that you don't have Maria Wallace help you because she's not very good with that. But we hope that you come down and join us to coffee hour. And if you're new, you can feel free to take a dark blue mug And that lets us know that you're open to conversation from members. I also want to tell you that the flowers on the altar today are in loving memory of Laura Rigg, the daughter of Harriet Major and the sister of Jamie Major. Also, there's plenty of announcements in your order of service that hopefully you'll peruse at your leisure, but I want to draw your attention to the annual meeting on May 20th. It's a very important meeting, so all members are encouraged to attend, and there's all kinds of events that you can look at on the announcements. Also, it's now time to take the morning offering, and the plate beneficiary, the Share the Plate beneficiary for the month of April is Community Meals.
We introduce our silence today with words from Gautama Buddha. As you walk and eat and travel, be where you are. Otherwise, you miss out on most of your life. We enter a moment of silence and mindfulness together.
Today's reading is Love Should Grow Up Like a Wild Iris in the Fields by Susan Griffin. Love should grow up like a wild iris in the fields, unexpected after a terrible storm, opening a purple mouth to the rain, with not a thought to the future, ignorant of the grass and the graveyard of leaves around, forgetting its own beginning. Love should grow like a wild iris, but does not. Love more often is to be found in kitchens at the dinner hour, tired and hungry, lingers over tables in houses where the walls record movements, while the cook is probably angry and the ingredients of the meal are budgeted, while a child cries, "Feed me now," and her mother, not quite hysterical, says over and over, "Wait, just a bit, just a bit." Love should grow up in the fields like a wild iris, but never does really startle anyone. Was to be expected, was to be predicted, is almost absurd. Goes on from day to day, not quite blindly, gets taken to the cleaners every fall, sings old songs over and over, and falls on the same piece of rug that never gets tacked down. Gives up, wants to hide, is not brave, knows too much, is not like an iris growing in the wild, but more like staring into space in the street, not quite sure which door it was, annoyed about the sidewalk being slippery, trying all the doors, thinking, if love wished the world to be well, it would be well. Love should grow up like a wild iris, but doesn't. It comes from the midst of everything else, sees like the iris of an eye. When the light is right, feels in the blindness, and when there is nothing else, is tender, blinks, and opens face up to the skies.
Well, that is sacred music, kind of both a longing and a statement of faith. And I'm going to begin by talking about a book that is also a sacred in a certain way. In 1941, James Agee, whom some of you know as a great American author, and Walker Evans, a great American photographer, together published a book about mainly three sharecropper families during the Great Depression. Some of the book was really documenting just exactly what they had and what they didn't have. They went through a list of clothing, a list of the food that was and was not in the house, and talked in some detail about the shelter, which was not exactly of the quality that most of us are used to. But then there were moments when it transcended all this documentation, and you really got to see who these people were. There were people of remarkable courage and faith in the future, and love. And by love, I mean not just love between the family, though that's, of course, extremely important, love for parents and their children, but love for one another, for neighbors. These were desperate days. Nobody had enough to eat, and yet if somebody had more than the others, they shared. The name of that book is really quite remarkable. It was entitled, "Let Us Now Praise Famous Men." And it wasn't at all about famous men. It wasn't about the people in Washington who were making decisions about how to deal with the Great Depression, or the people on Wall Street. It was about sharecroppers and their families. The assumption was that it's not the people in Washington who got us through this time, but people like these sharecroppers and their remarkable courage, their remarkable love, their faith in the future. And so in some ways, what the whole book does is turn our understanding of the world upside down. It suggests that it's not the people that we think are so important that make things happen, but rather we get through the Depression and other struggles because of ordinary people, ordinary courage, ordinary strength, ordinary faith and love. It's really a making concrete of the last shall be first and the first last. The people who make this world survive are ordinary people. And that was true not only in the Depression, but also in our own time. So often it seems that we're on the brink of self-annihilation, and the world is saved from generation to generation, not by presidents and prime ministers, but by ordinary people, sometimes by high school students who band together to remind us that we don't have to deal with this kind of violence. Perhaps this spiritual community that we have here, this sanctuary that holds our fears and our dreams, our hopes, this passes on from generation to generation, not because of the names written in bronze in the back of the room. We've named all the ministers there, all of them, save one, I believe. Well, there were some interims, but all save one was male. It's not the ministers that pass this tradition on from generation to generation, but the people in the pews. And often, it's women. It's women who, whenever we have a memorial service, whenever we take the time to recognize the life of someone who has died, it's women who gather downstairs and set up the room for the family and prepare coffee and cookies and whatever else is required and host it so that the family in grief can work through their grief, can be in grief and share with one another. It's often women who without drawing any attention to themselves at all, create every Sunday the order of worship, which is no easy task, who straighten the pew cards, who make sure that the candles are the proper length and are clipped properly, who maintain the garden, who find a way to keep the church alive when the men, for the most part, have forgotten, have given up on it. It's not so much the people who are listed on the plaque in the back, and that will one day include me. It's not so much us who pass this tradition on from generation to generation. It's the women and men who are committed to this church, who balance the budgets, who visit those who are struggling and listen to those who are struggling. It's those who replace the globes for the lights in here. And it's those who repair water damage and unclog drains and work in the kitchen to make hot meals for young people who otherwise would not have a lunch at all. There is a place for presidents and prime ministers and even parish ministers. But their place is to remind everyone else that the sacred is in them. The place of leaders in some ways is to hold up a mirror and say, you want to know where the holy is? Take a look. It's right here. It's in you. It's in the people around you. This is where the work really gets done. Colin Hatcher is one of the members of this church. He is clearly called to the chaplaincy. We all know that. But he spoke here last Sunday, and he reminded us in every possible way that we are all part of the holy. In the sermon he gave, he reminded us, and in calling 3 of his contemporaries up here to read their stories, to share their stories, he was reminding us that each person here has a story. Each person has a holy life. Each person has something to share. That's the role of leaders, to remind us who we are, to remind us that we're the ones who have the courage and the faith and the love to get through all this. When James Agee entitled that book, Let Us Now Praise Famous Men, he was not talking about the people whose names are on the paper. Let us now praise famous women and men. And by that I don't mean Taylor Swift or Donald Trump or LeBron James or even Oprah. I mean we ourselves and the people who are sitting around us. It is we, ordinary people, who have the courage and the faith and the love to share. This was the central message of Jesus' teaching. Scholars call this the preferential option for the poor. You've probably heard that phrase. What it means is that Jesus, whenever he got a choice between being with those in apparent power, the famous people, the ones who were in charge of the temple or in charge of the state, or ordinary people, fishermen, prostitutes, he chose to be with the ordinary people. And there's a Sermon on the Mount that reminds us all that the holy is not only with those who don't have money, but with those who are struggling with all kinds of things. The holy is in those who struggle. And it's broadened even further. I like the story in the last Gospel of John where the followers ask Jesus, what are we going to do without you? How are we going to know which way to move without you? How are we going to learn anymore? And Jesus said, one of the great lines, I think, there are many rooms in my Father's house. I know the way to living my whole life, to living fulfillment, finding fulfillment in my life. But you're the only one who knows how to find fulfillment in your life. You are the only one. You're the only one who knows how to get to the room that's yours. And by the way, it wasn't just Jesus, it was all the other great teachers. I think of Gautama, the Buddha. His last words were these: do not believe what your teacher tells you merely out of respect for the teacher. Nobody should ever say that from a pulpit, but I'll say it again. Do not believe what your teacher tells you merely out of respect for the teacher, but whatsoever, after due examination and analysis, you find conducive to the good, the benefit, the welfare of all beings, that doctrine believe and cling to and take as your guide. Be lamps unto yourselves. Be your own confidence. Hold to the truth within yourself as to the only lamp. And this was spoken by religious leaders throughout the ages. Martin Luther, when he talked about the priesthood of all believers, said, don't believe what the great magisterium tells you. Don't believe what all those ordained people are telling you. Look within. Trust your own life. I think of the Universalists, the Pietists, during the same period of time during the Reformation. They did not believe in pulpits like this one, because pulpits were places where people were telling others what to believe and what to do with their lives. So instead, they worshipped in what they called conventicles. They worshipped in circles of about 20 people. And each of them shared, and each of them interpreted life for themselves. And the others were not cross-talking or criticizing, they were listening, believing that each person has something to share with others. Each of us has the holy within us. And I think of Emerson and his Divinity School address, which I believe may be the most important document in our whole tradition. It's a brilliant document. You need to read it. It's online if you ever want to read it for yourselves. And what it says basically is, don't go to books or scholars to find out what you believe and how to live a fulfilling life. It says the only way to do this is through your own intuition, through listening to the voice within you. You're the only one who knows how to live your life fully. And I know this is a strange example, but I'm going to share one more example here. This is from yesterday's paper. Some of you read from the pulpit, where there's 300 words from various ministers. This one is from Reverend L. Trucano, who's a Methodist minister. I'm going to read just the end of it. Now, I know there is some Christian language here. It may be hard for some of you. But listen to it, and listen to what it's really saying. Jesus is revealed to us in very ordinary times. Perhaps it is in a conversation over coffee, or when we are getting our mail at the post office, or it could be a casual conversation on business. I saw Jesus, when a couple held hands and prayed over their meal in a public place. I recognized him when somebody stopped me and asked about my health. There are many opportunities to know him and to see him. Be open. You will see the face of Jesus when you least expect him. I know he's using the name Jesus here, but what he's saying is the holy, very clearly, is in each and every person. No one has it more than anyone else. It's all right there. The goal is to see that life, our own lives are holy, that every part of our lives are holy. I'm going to give yet one more example. This Tuesday I had an appointment just to check up at the dentist. My dentist always has great works of art in his waiting room. And this time he had one that really just I couldn't believe how wonderful it was. And by the way, it's on the cover of your order of worship if you want to follow along here. What it shows is 20 small panels about life. The first panel is a birthday party. The second panel has a person who has died, the body laid out, some candles around it, and people in grief. And it goes on to show all kinds of aspects of life. It shows people having fun together. It shows people in solitude. One person even watching TV, God forbid. It shows people making love. It shows people in the classroom. It shows everything. It shows every color, every hue of human beings. And what it clearly says is that every aspect of life is holy. Every person is holy. The little people are holy. The big people are holy. The men and the women are holy. The darker people are holy, and the lighter people are holy. This is the fundamental message of religion. It's also, by the way, what you heard this morning in the story, in the poem by Susan Griffin. Love, she said, love should grow like a wild iris. We think of it as just growing by itself, but it doesn't happen that way. Love is more often to be found in the kitchen at the dinner hour, tired out and hungry. It lingers over a table in houses where the walls record movements, while the cook is probably angry and the ingredients of the meal are budgeted, while the child cries, "Feed me now," and her mother, not quite hysterical, says over and over, "Wait just a bit, just a bit." That's where love happens, in our ordinary lives. And it's important to know this. This is not an abstraction. It's important to know this, because when we do, we understand that we're the ones with the power. It's not the people in Washington. It's the sharecroppers who got us through the Great Depression. It's not the people in Washington. It's the high school kids who are getting us through some of our troubles these days. The holy lies within us, and the power lies within us. We have that power. And I have one other reading this morning to share with you to prove that we have their power. It's so outrageous, you won't believe it, so I'm going to tell you where it's from. It's from Newsweek, March 7th. If you want to look it up, it's actually there. This news is so it's un-American. Hundreds of doctors and medical specialists in Quebec have signed a petition protesting a pay raise they are to receive from the public health care system. You heard that right. They argue that tax cuts to the system are putting unreasonable pressure on nurses and clerks and are leading to a decline in the quality of care. The doctors urge that the money represented by the pay raises be redistributed to nurses and used to improve services. That really happened. It's utterly un-American. But we have it in our power to do such things. We have it in our power to redistribute wealth in this country. And on a much smaller scale, we have it in our power to see everyone here as a holy, sacred person and to treat each person with the dignity that they deserve. And this is where it begins. The closing hymn is number 358 from in the hymnal. Let me say a word before we actually sing it. One of the reasons I'm choosing it, it's rank by rank, again we stand, is because it's the opening hymn each year at the service of the living tradition, which is the very last part of General Assembly. The service of the living tradition is about 90 minutes long. It is so moving, and it begins each year with this hymn. About 1,000 or more people are singing it. It's a very big hymn. And every year you can go for free. It's in Kansas City this year. You can go just for the service of living tradition. It's a freebie. And if you don't want to go that far, you can watch it online. It's streamed just as our services are. The sermon this year is by one of the faculty of Starr King School for the Ministry. It's really worth considering this. So together we will sing, rank by rank, again we stand. Because of those who came before, we are. In spite of their failings, we believe. Because of and in spite of the horizons of their vision, we too dream. Let us go, remembering to praise, to live in the moment, to love mightily, and to bow to the mystery.